Hello there. In this video I'm going to demonstrate for you the integration capabilities of Kapow Katalyst. The example I'm going to use is the automation of a manual anti-money laundering business process. This is something that one of our clients actually does, so I'll set the scene for you and explain how Kapow can help. Effectively, one of our clients is a retail bank, and one of the problems they have for anti-money laundering is they can't do business with certain blacklisted individuals. So the problem that they have is when they sign on new customers, they must check each of these customers against several lists of outlawed individuals. These can be from regulatory bodies, law enforcement agencies, or government departments, generally speaking. Now the problem is that none of these services provide an automated way of getting this information. There's no API, there's no integration that can be done. So the way that this process is normally tackled is through a manual process. Somebody actually has to pick up each of these individuals who need to be checked, and they go away to the target website, do some sort of search against the blacklist, and another one, and another one. And obviously, depending on whether this is a global organisation, there are lots of these lists to search, all of which has to be done manually. And then when we've worked out whether this person is on the list or not, the money laundering check can be updated. As you can see, there's a lot of manual processing to be done here, particularly as there are many different sites that need to be addressed. Now our customer really wanted a more streamlined approach. Their logic was if they can have a consolidated database containing all the individuals on all of the blacklists, then that would make their life a lot easier. You take the individual, you just do a single query against the consolidated blacklist and then do the update. Much easier, much more streamlined process. And this is where Kapow fits into the whole picture. Kapow sits between the consolidated database and the external data sources, and Kapow can be used to automatically extract the information from these sites, structure it as necessary, and store it in this consolidated database. So that's really what I'm going to show you now. I'm going to show you how you actually achieve that with Kapow. So the first thing I'll do is have a look at one of these source sites. So what we have here is just one of those, Interpol. So on the Interpol site, they produce a list of wanted persons. Unfortunately, if you appear on this list, then you're outlawed and the bank can't do business with you. So effectively, what we need to do is we need to collect each one of these individuals, and there will be a profile page associated with each of them. Collect various bits of information, like the name, like the charges against them, so on and so forth. Perhaps get the image if there is one, that sort of thing. So in the world of Kapow, how do we do this? Well, let's switch over to our design studio, and I'll show you one of the projects I've been working on to actually achieve this. And our starting point is to create a data structure that represents the items of interest to us. So here I have something called a fugitive data type. It's effectively a table in a database, and each of the columns will have a different data type. So I'm collecting things like the name of the fugitive, their photo, what are they wanted for, and that sort of thing. But the real magic inside Kapow happens when you start to build what we call robots. These are the processes that map external content onto this data structure. So what I'm going to do here is I'll show you one of these. We'll build up one of these so you can see how it's actually done. It's fairly obvious. There's a workflow along the top here. This first step is going to load a page. This page is looking familiar. So obviously we have a browser here now, but it's not a true browser. You'll see as I click on these things, I'm not actually following these links, but it is highlighting the item of interest for me as I go through here. And the idea is, what you would typically do is interact with this browser interface to build up the logic that you want your robot to implement. So for example, now I want to build a loop for each of these individuals on the page. So what I would do is point to one of the individuals, or the HTML that represents one of the individuals, choose the action I want a loop here, and effectively Kapow now puts a new step in there for us, by which it will highlight the first iteration of my loop. And I can check my loop by showing each of the iterations as we go through, or back to the beginning. Now in this particular website there's an odd use of a style sheet, in that the details link hidden behind here is not actually shown until I move the mouse over that particular item. Well, I can simulate that inside Kapow as well by using this move to action, and now you can see the detail link appears, and it's at this point I can start to extract some of the information. So you'll remember from the fugitive variable there are various attributes I want to collect, the first one of which is the URL. Now the URL is hidden behind this details link, so I should be able to easily extract the URL and map it to the appropriate attribute. All the while I'm doing this, you can see that the rule is building up along the top there. I've got some of it already built because I don't need to go through the detail here, but you get the idea now. What I'm going to do is click on the details link, which will take me to the profile page of this particular individual. And now I can extract some of the extra data. So here I'm extracting the name, but you'll notice as I click past this, I'm not taking the full name, I'm just taking the first part of it. That's because in this particular case, Interpol have surnames first, first names last. Well, in my world, I'd like that the other way around. I like first names first, surnames last. So this first step only deals with extracting the surname. And I'm extracting again from the same item, but this time I'm using some converters to ensure I only get the first names, and I glue it together with the existing surname in the right order. And I've also capitalised the case as well because I prefer it that way. So now I have the name in exactly the right format for me. Kapow doesn't just deal with textual information, we can also deal with photographs as well. So in this particular case, what I'm doing is I'm doing a little check, because I know on the Interpol website sometimes they have an image that actually says on the image, photo not available. So it is an image, it's just not a useful image. So in this particular case, I'm choosing to test this tag to see if the image is relevant or not. If it is, as it is in this case, what we'll go on and do is extract that image. If the image is not relevant, as in it says not available, then what we'll do is we'll go around this branch and ignore the extraction step and move on to the next item of content. And effectively, this is your wanted for. So what is the person wanted for? And there are a couple of areas on the page where we can get this information. So I'm going to extract it from both and concatenate it into the wanted for section down here. So now we have a concatenation of both of those bits of information. So effectively I've got an entire record that I need to store in my database. So I'll finish the process off with a simple store in database step, and that will do it for me. There's only one other bit of information I should show here, which is the navigation. So unfortunately there isn't just one page of content here. If we go back to the source page, you'll see that there are in fact 34 pages of fugitives listed on the Interpol website. So this little structure here deals with navigating to the next page. If I put this into debug mode and run it, we'll start to build up the database and do the collection, and you'll see how this goes. So you can see which iteration of people we're on, the 5th one at the moment, and in a moment we'll click onto page 2 and collect all the individuals from page 2. There we go, so we're now starting at the beginning of the list on page 2, and we're building up an entire database of content. So some of these have images that are useful to us, so we're collecting them, some of them don't. You get the idea. So the idea is once I've created this robot, what I would do is I will build a similar process for all of my other sources. So again, in my project I have one of these for the FBI, I have another one that collects information from Dow Jones, one for the Financial Services Authority, one for Crime Stoppers, which is part of the Metropolitan Police in the UK. So there are various different sources, and the idea is once I've saved my robot, what I can do is publish that up to what we call our management console. I'm just going to pop it into an appropriate project on the management console. Open up that management console and we can have a look at it. So just going to log in. And this will show me all of the robots that I have on my server. Let's just have a look inside the Intel project. You should see that I have the most wanted Interpol demo. That's the robot we were working on a moment ago, safely inside that repository. And typically what I would do with these to produce the consolidated database is build a schedule. So over here I have some schedules, one of which here is called Update the AML Blacklist, which runs at 3 AM every day. And what it does is it runs all robots that start with the phrase most wanted and all robots that start with the word blacklist. So that means, I've got various different robots that will collect my most wanted lists, and I have various robots that are collecting blacklists from various places. So effectively, at 3 AM every day, all of those robots are run and they will repopulate my database for me. And one of the features of Kapow is whilst that data collection is happening, it will automatically deduplicate those records. So there is no point us inserting the same record 2 days running if nothing has changed. You just want it updated and flagged the fact that it's still there, but nothing has changed on the record. And all that happens automatically behind the scenes with Kapow. So I have my consolidated database. There is just one other thing I'll show you. Within Kapow we have the concept of synthetic APIs. So now I have my consolidated database. I'd like to give my end user an easy way of searching on that content. So what I did here was I actually built another robot called Search Most Wanted. It's very, very simple. It basically just executes a couple of database queries based on parameters that I'm actually passing to the robot at runtime. So I did the same sort of thing. I tested it, it works, that's great. Upload it to my management console. So within my management console, we should see in the repository I have my Search Most Wanted robot over here. But for the programmers amongst you, then one of the features that we have here is every time I publish a robot, it actually gets deployed as a REST web service automatically. So this is the URL of my REST web service. In this particular case, it requires some input parameters like the name and the crime that they're wanted for. So let's just test this out. I'll put in a name here. I know that there's some Richards in the database, so let's just do a search for Richard, and I don't really care what the crime is, so I'll just leave that blank, and let's collect the results in JSON format rather than XML, for example. So the robot has now runs pretty quickly, and you can see here that according to Dow Jones, at this URL you will find some information about Richard Watson Associates, which sounds more like a company than an individual, but that's fine. And then obviously what they're wanted for, any images in base 60 from text. So effectively I can give this to a programmer and they know that they now have effectively an API that they can call, pass in various parameters and get results in the format that they want, so they can incorporate into that into their code. But from a business user's point of view, who probably doesn't know what this web service means, then what we can do is we can wrap up these robots in what we call caplets. And these caplets enable a user, once they've logged into the system, to execute any one of those robots from this sort of cap zone, as we call it. So each one of these represents a different robot that I have installed in my particular usage area, and the one that I'm interested in is this one here, which is the AML person search. So by clicking open here, I can then fill in the name and what the person is wanted for. So let's try it again. Let's try that Richard query. Don't care what they're wanted for. I don't really want to schedule this to run at scheduled frequencies on this particular occasion. If this runs for a long time, I can get it to send me an email when it's done, but I think I'll just hit search. And you'll see as I hit search, then Richard is added to the list of results over here. By clicking on any one of these results, you'll see that I have the results coming in. And again, I can have a look at each of these prior results as well. So the idea here would be, in my anti-money laundering, all I have to do is, from a manual perspective, enter the name of the person I want to check, and if I get 0 results over here, I know that they're not included on any of the lists that we need to check. So the whole process goes down from taking hours at a time to taking minutes, thus really improving the efficiency of the process. One more thing I'll consider though is, if we go back to our process here, we can see now we have the consolidated database and a single query covers all of the data sources, but this is still deemed a manual process. However, I'll leave you with one final thought. Consider the source information. Where are we extracting this information from? Well, it's an internal system. It's an internal system that has a browsable interface. Therefore, I should be able to build a Kapow robot that cycles through each of the individuals in our internal banking application, and then rather than manually checking against the database, I can use Kapow to do that bit as well. So using these two different processes, a scheduled collection that goes away and automatically updates my consolidated database, I can then use another automated process that extracts information from the internal system, cross-references against the consolidated database, and provides that update to the internal banking system automatically. And this is an absolutely typical example of how Kapow can help with automating processes. So I appreciate your time. Thanks very much for sticking with me to the end of the video, and you'll see some details on the screen if you want to find out anything else about Kapow software or our solutions. Thank you very much. Goodbye.